Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events has been a huge success. It basically brought Lemony Snicket and this 13-book series back into the spotlight for the first time since the movie was released in 2004. Mixing in clever humor with mysterious plot, the series is definitely one to watch. But wherever there are mysteries, there must be theories. Hello, it's CTO of the Theory channel, and how can I not make a theory on this show? I mean, the theme song is telling you to look away, the villain is an actor who wants to steal children's fortunes, the show was released on a Friday the 13th, and Season 2 was recently confirmed by having to decode a secret message, which took you to a website where Daniel Handler, or Lemony Snicket, had written a long letter saying not to watch it. Yeah. This show is practically begging for theorization. And of course, I'm happy to give it some. Now, there are 13 books in the whole series, but Netflix has only released Season 1 of the show, which covers the first 4 books and consists of 8 episodes. So I will only be theorizing upon the 8 episodes that we have to work with, and nothing else. Since Daniel Handler has made it clear that the plot of the TV show will be somewhat different from the plot of the books, none of the other 9 books will be included. The books, the 2004 movie, and the Netflix series all are narrated by Lemony Snicket, as I'm sure all of you know. In the books, we get to go in and out of Snicket's train of thoughts, or narration, and in the movie, all we really get of Snicket is some brief dialogue at the beginning and end, as well as typewriter scenes in the middle. But much more about Snicket is revealed in the show. Snicket, played by Patrick Warburton, is shown in many of the scenes of the actual plot, for example, being the lifeguard at Briny Beach, or hiking through the woods as the Baudelaires reach Lucky Smell's lumber mill. He reveals many details about characters, history, and most importantly, ranch dressing. No, I'm just kidding, although he does mention it in part 2 of The Reptile Room, but the most important details that Snicket tells us are about himself. We also get to see Snicket in what apparently is his motel room quite often, and that is most likely where the intro scene takes place. Due to the fact that throughout the episodes, Snicket addresses the events that are happening as in the past, we can assume that almost all of the show is actually a flashback, except for the scenes in the motel room and some of the scenes with Snicket in the underground labyrinth. These are the only scenes that are actually happening. The rest is basically Lemony Snicket telling a very, very, very long story. And just the lyrics to the ending musical number in the last episode, "That's just how the story goes," kind of symbolizes this. It also means that when Snicket is abruptly shown in plot scenes, he's not actually there, and while you could have assumed that before, it's confirmed by this. It kind of reminds me of in Harry Potter, when Harry either enters the Pensieve or Tom Riddle's diary, and Harry's there, but not actually, because no one can see, hear, or even touch him. So, am I saying that the Baudelaires, Count Olaf, and the whole plot of A Series of Unfortunate Events is actually made up? No, I'm not, but I do believe that this whole story thing is very important, and I'll get into it again later. What also happens throughout the episodes is that Snicket becomes more and more open about himself and his past, particularly about his past love interest, Beatrice, who apparently broke his heart by saying that she couldn't marry him in a 300-page book. Oof, talk about stretching out the pain. But I think that the most logical scenario is that Beatrice is actually Beatrice Baudelaire. So, is this the whole reason why Snicket studies the series of unfortunate events that the Baudelaires go through? Is it because he loved their mother? I mean, Snicket seemed to be more obsessive than anything with the Baudelaires. What's a middle-aged man doing keeping track of every single detail of 3 orphans' lives if he has nothing to do with them? He pins photos of characters, articles of events, and maps on his walls, for heaven's sakes. No. Snicket has to have some kind of tie to the Baudelaires, and that just further supports the theory that his Beatrice is Beatrice Baudelaire. And this is where things get even more sad. First, Snicket is turned down by Beatrice with a 300-page book that explains why she cannot marry him. Then, Beatrice apparently goes and marries the Baudelaire's father, Bertrand. Then, a fire burns down their entire home, and the two of them with it, though I'm not at all convinced of that. And finally, their children are seized by an evil psychopath. It's like one long road of tears, isn't it? So that would be where the theory would end, with the show basically being about a heartbroken man who tells the story of his love interest's children who are taken away by a fortune-stealing maniac. But it doesn't end here. And this is thanks to a couple of details throughout the episodes. The evidence is clear that Snicket, the Baudelaire parents, and Olaf all knew each other when they were younger. In the 8th episode, when the Baudelaires are left by Mr. Poe at the Auster Academy, a picture is shown. In it, laughing with each other, is a younger Lemony Snicket and a younger Count Olaf. In the 3rd episode, when Olaf is chasing the children up the stairs with a knife, he comments that he took the picture of the parents inside the piano. There's clearly something strange going on here. Olaf loathes the Baudelaires now, Snicket despises Olaf, and Olaf is shown to be sensitive to Snicket's name when the hook-handed man comments that a piece of cake is lemony. So, I have come to the realization that something happened. Okay, that's a bit vague. Let's get into this. The Baudelaire parents, Count Olaf, Lemony Snicket, and most likely Dr. Montgomery and Aunt Josephine, too, were in some kind of group, or were at least good friends. Then, some kind of fight occurred, and it involved Beatrice turning down Snicket, and so the group split apart, and while the Baudelaires, Monty, Josephine, and others went one way, Olaf and, yes, Snicket went the other. Now, of course you might be thinking, but Snicket hates Olaf now. True. I mean, he spends his whole life recording Olaf's devious acts. But that only started after Olaf started the Baudelaire fire. Yes, I said it. Count Olaf started the Baudelaire fire. Snicket and Olaf had worked with each other for many years, and Olaf kept many secrets to himself. Snicket just didn't know how evil Olaf was. But the constant throughout this is that Snicket still secretly loved Beatrice, even though she was with another man. And when Olaf ultimately killed Beatrice, Snicket was devastated and instantly hated Olaf. And I'm sorry to make another Harry Potter analogy, but this is nearly identical to when Voldemort killed Lily, and Snape, who was a loyal server to him, never forgave him after that because he loved Lily. But anyway, all of this thoroughly explains why Snicket is so into the whole plot of the Baudelaire children's lives. He used to love their mother. He was part of a group that included their parents, Olaf, and numerous other characters. His ex-coworker, who he now hates, is the villain. And perhaps most of all, he is ashamed that he couldn't stop Count Olaf from murdering the woman he loved. No, think about it. The theme song of the show is telling us all not to watch it. And no, it's not because it contains many unfortunate events like Snicket says it does. It's because Snicket's ashamed at his own past and what he couldn't stop from happening. Now is the time to summarize this whole theory, as well as see what bits of evidence it can be supported by. Years ago, the Baudelaire parents, Count Olaf, Lemony Snicket, and possibly Monty and Josephine were all part of a group of friends. Then, some kind of altercation occurred, and the group broke apart, with Olaf and Snicket branching off. They became very close, although Snicket isn't aware of Olaf's true power and malicious intentions. Snicket is in love with Beatrice Baudelaire throughout this whole time, and when Olaf murders her, Snicket instantly hates Olaf and is also ashamed at himself for not being able to stop him. And so, Snicket spends his later years researching and telling us, the viewers, about all of the unfortunate events that the Baudelaire children go through, while really the most unfortunate one was to himself. Now, evidence time. Let's see. The piano and Auster Academy photos can be easily summed up by the fact that all of these characters knew each other when they were younger. Count Olaf's knowing of the Baudelaires and their parents can be summed up by this as well. Lemony Snicket spending countless nights crying himself to sleep would be explained by his love for Beatrice and the fact that she is now dead. The Look Away song could be because of Snicket's shame for himself. He does not want us viewers to see what he couldn't stop. And Olaf being the fire starter, just simply makes sense. Oh, one last thing. I realize that Snicket says in the first episode that he has searched and searched for the answer as to who started the Baudelaire fire, and that he hasn't found anything. This obviously contradicts my theory, but Snicket's actually lying here. He doesn't want to tell us that he in fact was in close relations with the fire starter, who just so happens to be Count Olaf. I think I've made my point clear. So, as a whole, I do think this theory has a lot of evidence, and that it really does make sense. A series of unfortunate events has a deep plot for what started as a children's book series, and I've immersed myself into the thick of it for days now. And I'm not done. I still want to discuss things like who is the mysterious Jacqueline character, how did the Baudelaires get such an enormous fortune in the first place, and finally, after more of these theories are in play, I'll create a nice big timeline for the whole unfortunate universe. Please subscribe if you like this and hope to hear more theories soon. Or, you know what? If it worked for Lemony Snicket's audience, maybe it'll work for mine, so don't subscribe. See what I did there? Anyway, until next time, it's CTO of the Theory Channel.